I've always loved putting things together. I used to choreograph to the cartoons like the Gummy Bears and DuckTales and stuff like that. That's embarrassing, but that's what I did.
I can kind of remember the moment when I decided that my height was something to own, you know?
I'm Jessica Stone. I'm the director of the season's new musical, Water for Elephants.
My name is Camille A. Brown, and I'm the choreographer for Hell's Kitchen.
My name is Amber Iman. I'm playing Rafaela in Lempicka.
I'm Heidi Schreck. I'm translating and adapting Uncle Vanya.
Hi, I'm Deep Tram, the editor-in-chief of Playbill, and let's get this conversation started. So, what was your dream when you started in the industry?
I feel like my dream was simple in the beginning. I just wanted to be a great craftsman. I just wanted to be the best storyteller possible in whatever medium, wherever I was working. My mother's an actor, so I think I grew up with a different understanding of what it meant to be an artist. Even my, I think, definition of success looked different because getting to watch how much my mother was employed versus unemployed, you know, knowing that the big shiny lights didn't mean success or didn't mean she was a working actress. Like, she just worked constantly, TV, film, wherever. And so I just wanted to be good. I thought that that was the most important thing. So yeah, simple dreams.
I think my dream was to be able to tell stories very much like Amber. And I just wanted to do one show in theater. I grew up in concert dance, and my background is through concert dance, and I danced in a company. I'm a dancer as well, and theater, the theater world is completely different from the concert dance. So I really didn't know how to break into the industry. So in my mind, I was like, well, my dream is just to do one show. And thankfully I was able to do more than one, but it's just really exciting.
My dream was actually to be Annie.
I love this.
And when I was a kid, my parents were divorced, and I grew up in upstate New York, and my dad was in New York City, and I would spend school vacations and summer vacations with him, and he would take me to see everything he possibly could on every trip. And so he took me in one trip to see, you know, Andres Serban's Trojan Women at La Mama, and I was 7. Dracula with Frank Langella, I'm dating myself, and Annie in the same trip. And that was the one that I got bit by the bug, and I wanted to be Annie. I never did play Annie, but
Annie.
maybe I'm more of a pepper. I don't know. It started as acting, and then I took classes and went to a high school of performing arts in upstate New York, and was an actor for a long time and loved it, and then one day outgrew it and transitioned to something else. But the whole thing started with Annie. Sarah Jessica Parker was my Annie. She was playing Annie at the time.
Andrea McCardle was my Annie. Yeah. I had the record.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You know, it's hard to say. My mom had a theater company for kids when I was little. I grew up in a very small town. My mom had this company called the Short Shakespeareans. And so I played Hermia when I was 6. That was my first role. And then I played all the great Shakespearean heroines between the ages of 6 and 12. And then I got too tall for the Short Shakespeareans, and they kicked me out. And then she would take me to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival every year to see plays. The Scottish play was one of the first I ever saw when I was around 7, and I was entranced by it, also horrified. I remember staying up late thinking, like, could I be a murderer? You know, there was like a lot of, like, it awakened a lot of stuff in me. And I guess I just really fell in love with theater. But then I didn't know that it took me a long time to figure out it's that's what I wanted to do. I worked as a journalist in Russia. Thought I was going to go to law school. I did a lot of different things before becoming an actor. And then when I first started acting and performing, I was also writing in Seattle, and I had a theater company with a bunch of friends. And so I guess that was when I properly started in the business. And I think my dream was to be, our dream was to be like Steppenwolf.
I feel like I need to do my answer over.
You can do your answer.
I didn't realize it was about how we got into theater. I mean, everybody is pulling out their inspiration, and I'm like, oh, okay.
But I loved your answer, though.
I know your answer too.
I was sure. I was like,
We just have to go to lunch.
Yes, yeah. I mean, my mom got me into theater. She introduced me to everything from like The Wiz, The Seven Brides, The Seven Brothers, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, and I always wanted to be a part of theater. But like I said before, the concert dance is completely different from theater, so I wasn't exactly sure how to break into the industry. And one day, one of my friends said, "Well, just start speaking it into existence," and I started speaking it into existence, having conversations with people. I'm a dancer, I'm a choreographer. I'd also love to pursue a career in theater. And I got an email asking me to be a part of the show, and that was it.
Yeah, but Camille, like you've done so many firsts. Like you're the first Black woman to direct and choreograph on Broadway in 67 years because you did For Colored Girls. You were the first Black woman director to do an opera at the Met.
Thank you.
And so entering an industry where there are no women who look like you doing your job, what propelled you to continue to do it?
Yeah, I mean, there were women that were doing the job. I just don't think they had the exposure that other men got, because there's Marlise Yerby, there's Diane McIntyre, Pearl Primus, Carmen de la Valade. So there are many people that have come before me. And what was the other question? What was the other part of your question?
What propelled you to keep on going?
Oh, them. No, I mean, I'm going into an industry, like you said, you don't see that many reflections of yourself, and you're having to dig and find what the reflections are of you. And once you see them, I immediately reached out to Marlise and Diane because I knew that they forged their own path. They had their own companies, and they were also director choreographers. So I wanted to know how they did it. And thankfully, they are two women that I love and cherish and have really helped me, and Carmen de la Valade as well. So they really, and my community. I don't think you can do anything alone. You know, even though we are all standing here as individuals, and sometimes in our positions we may feel very much alone, we have our communities all around us. So I really hold on to that too.
When did your dreams shift from, like, Heidi, you started out as an actor and now you're a writer, and Amber, you started off as an actor as well. A lot of actors. You began as actors, and now you're also an activist and founder of multiple Black-led organizations for Broadway. And so when did it shift?
There's a need, answering a call, a need, a question. I never set out to be an activist. I still don't want to be an activist. I still just want to act. But I read a tweet somewhere that said most Black women don't set out to be activists. They just get tired of no one speaking up for them. And I think that's what happened. Broadway Advocacy Coalition started 2016. We were doing Shuffle Along, and I kept seeing, I love Broadway, but sometimes we get a little bit much. You know, it'll be Broadway for Trader Joe's, Broadway for Britney Spears. And I tweeted one day, I was like, when are we going to have Broadway for Black Lives Matter? And it was just, I had no intentions of doing anything. I kind of just wanted to poke the bear and hide the stick. But so many people responded, like, well, Amber, if anyone's going to do anything, it's going to be you. And I was like, oh, crap. But that's how it got started, of just being exhausted of not feeling supported or seen or heard. And sometimes you can't wait. You know, I worked with Broadway Serves for so many years, and their motto is, you know, be the change beyond the stage, be the change that you want to see. And I just felt compelled to do something. I didn't really have an idea of what to do, how to get started, but I knew something needed to happen. And I think that's how most things happen. That's how we started Black Women on Broadway. I watched the Essence Black Women in Hollywood brunch for like 10 years and just was crossing my fingers that they would want to bring it to New York. And after a time, I was like, oh no, no one's going to do this. No one's going to celebrate women who love theater. they mostly want to celebrate us once we transitioned into TV and film, and I don't think that's fair because we are some of the hardest working, underpaid, overlooked women, and we deserve to be loved on while we are doing the thing that we love. And again, got tired of waiting, and I called some girls that I love and said, can we do this thing? Can we figure this out? So I feel like both times I've been pushed or called to answer a need in my community. And that probably stems back to like Girl Scouts, and just community service. And my mom always, taking me to places where service was the focus and community was important. But yeah, I think it's just answering a need. Yeah.
Like Heidi and Jessica, how about you? Because you've also transitioned careers and now you're multi-hyphenates.
I think the transition from acting to directing doesn't feel so much like a pivot because I think it's all in service to a story. I will say that always as an actor, I felt a little left out of the complete conversation, that I was really interested in points of the story that didn't have to do with my particular character's lane. I frankly think not that one caused the other, but having kids became instrumental in my interest in pursuing directing further, because I think doing 8 shows a week after a while is really rough. Like you want to put your kids to bed and you want to be with them on the weekends. And so that was part of it. It sort of dovetailed, I think, it was a happy accident. And I think someone gave me a chance at a time that not everybody, I think we're maybe better at this now, at looking at a new voice and saying, well, you're interesting, come aboard. But maybe a little better at that. But I just happened to have a mentor who I had an idea about something, and he said, well, let's give it a shot and try it on the main stage at Williamstown. And he just gave me a shot. And that doesn't always happen. I think people tend to not trust newness. They just want what they know. So it was a lot of luck. And then I discovered I loved it. And once I learned how much I loved the problems that come along with the directing and the challenges, and once I discovered the collaborations that are actually involved years before you ever start rehearsals, I was hooked. So it was a little bit of kismet. I think a lot of actors make natural directors, and parenthood and a mentor.
What was your first show at Williamstown?
It was a funny thing happened on the way to the forum.
Right. Yes.
And I was asked to be in it. And I was like, oh, God. I should not want to, who am I in that? I didn't want to be, I guess the shrewish wife, I guess. But I started thinking about, why do I not really enjoy that show? And I do. I think it's a beautiful score and it's a funny book, but I thought, well, it's just all these tropes that have been handed down to us by men who created these roles that men played. And so I said, well, you should just have men do it. Just have it be all male. And then we can enjoy the comedy of it and, the sort of male version of what women are. We can just leave that to them. And I think it'll be funnier. And so that's what it was.
I've been directed by Jess, and she's incredible, and it just makes me think that I do feel like I've been directed by a number of people who are actors as well, or actor turned director, and I do think it's wonderful to be directed by someone who knows what it's like to get up there and be
different point of view.
Yeah.
It is. Well, we were just talking about this before. It's a funny thing. A friend who was an actor turned director said this to me, and it's so true that, you walk 3 feet to the other side of the table and the clouds part, and you know exactly what should happen and why. And then you walk 3 feet in front of the table in a rehearsal room and it becomes muddy and confusing again. And it's so important to remember it's actually that hard and it can be that easy.
I love
You know, like it's a funny,
Yeah.
it's a funny thing to experience both sides of it, of that process.
Did that clarity happen for you too, Camille, when you decided to go from dancer to choreographer to director?
Yeah, dance to choreography was interesting. I've always loved putting things together. I used to choreograph to the cartoons like the Gummy Bears and DuckTales and stuff like that. That's embarrassing, but that's what I did.
DuckTales were great.
DuckTales, the music. Come
Yes. And then as I got older, the idea of what it means to have the ideal body came into play because I came into dance because of the joy. I have a very small voice. I used to get teased a lot about it, so I rarely spoke in front of people, and class participation was like not even a thing for me. And dance was a way for me to really express myself. But once I got older, the idea of being that ideal body that I just didn't fit in. So I had what I call my angels, which are teachers that really helped me and taught me. And then I have the other people that looked at me twice and was like, oh, she's not going to be a dancer or whatever, for whatever reason. So there were things that I was told I'm not going to fit the costume. My thighs are too big. My butt is too big. And so I started, when I went to college, I thought all of that was going to be washed away, starting a new day. Nope. I was put on diets, a lot of stuff, and I had a hard time. And I wanted to transfer, and my mom told me, well, we can think about transferring. Let's wait until the semester, but until then, try to find something that you love and you can focus on. And it was choreography at the time. I didn't really understand what it meant to be a choreographer because as a dancer, you're conditioned to learn whatever is done in front of you. So the teacher guides you and tells you. But here, Trish Casey was my first composition teacher in college. She was asking us actually to create what our language was, what our voice was. And so I found that that was a way for me to get past not being good enough for everyone and to create what the ideal is for myself and what the ideal is for others, and encourage others to create the ideal for themselves. So that's pretty much the connection or trajectory from dancer to choreographer. And then choreographer to director. I never wanted my own company. I was in a company, Ronald K. Brown Evidence, which is still in existence, and I was a dancer there for 5 seasons, and I would see a lot of times what Ron had to do. So he wasn't just the choreographer. We would go to the hotel, check in, he had a meeting, he had an interview, he had things to do, and I said, wow, I don't know if I'm capable of doing that. Also, I saw how much people really received his work and were moved by it. And I didn't know if I had the ability to create anything that would make people feel. So I was scared about having a company. But I also, throughout choreographing and working on other companies and commissions, I realized that I wanted to have my own community of dancers to figure out what my process was because I worked with other choreographers and they had their process and I wanted my own. And I also felt like I was influenced by a lot of choreographers, but I also wanted to have my own voice. And the way to do that is to zone in. And so I got a group of dancers and we were together for about five to 10 years. Some of them have been with me for 15 years. And just created and developed, and I started my own company. So technically, I've been a director ever since I've had my own company. But directing for theater happened with For Color Girls, and that was the first time. And I had a big freak out moment. I said, oh my gosh, I can't do this, oh my gosh. And my friends and family reminded me, it's like, Camille, you have a company. You've had a company for over 15 years. You've been a director, it's just in a different arena. So that's the very long story of dancer, choreographer, director.
Isn't it funny, the idea of voice? You know, I think about you describing your voice as being small, and yet your voice in your work is so powerful and fills the space in such a way that it's just, and it's funny what we do to ourselves and how we define ourselves and how we allow others to define us. And then that's just a new obstacle that never needed to be there, you know?
I can kind of remember the moment when I decided that my height was something to own, you know, because I don't know about you, but I was like,
I'm still working on it.
I was this height when I was 12.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So you're like,
yes.
it's just,
Yes.
you're just towering above everybody.
You
I remember
are.
being at a school dance and like some guy standing on a high
gosh.
stage and like, anyway.
All of my back problems now are from hunching over for years trying to be cute so boys would like me.
Oh, you know what I did too? I did the thing where you try to like round your back.
Yes, you
Yeah,
round, you
that
lean
makes you,
into
like,
your
a little
hip, you-
shorter. Yeah.
And it's
Chiropractic.
connected to being a woman.
It is.
It's
Yes.
this idea. I mean, I don't have to say this. I don't need to explain it to you, but like this idea that you know, somehow you have to apologize for being a woman
Yeah.
and being tall. Like, what
Yes.
even is that? And by the way, you have to apologize when you're small too.
Right.
Right. Just have to apologize for eating showing.
Yes, it's
Now I really like it. And I
Yeah.
like feeling like, yeah, I don't know, it feels powerful. I feel like I come from this line of very tall women, but it was a thing. And I don't know about you, but I also can remember, and maybe this is like, I don't know, I mean, I've always written. So, and I like, in college, I wrote the monologue. I performed at this, you know, the Irene Ryan contest, and I gave myself an alias because you weren't supposed to do that and pretended it was from a play that no one else had written. So I feel like I've always wanted to,
Yes.
even more than acting, but was scared, I think, for a long time and didn't know. I just very much relate to this idea of coming into the full knowledge more and more that I want to have. But I want my voice,
Yes.
whatever it is, and all its specificity and all its just meanness to get to be in the world, even if it's like I'm writing a book right now and I'm constantly like, this is terrible. This is or why should I write this? It's not going to be the greatest book of all time. And then I'm like, you know what? It's just enough to if I can just, which is hard enough, put my own voice into it, which is not easy actually.
Right.
Like that's my only task, and then beyond that, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
It's about that. It's like I wrote my first short film because I was in the running for a musical to play a leading lady, and they told me that, well, we've already cast the man and he's 5'8". And so I couldn't play opposite him because he was shorter than me, because that's not beautiful in our world, like the woman being taller. So I wrote a short film just so I could create a love scene, because I never get to see tall girls in love scenes. And that was my whole purpose for making the short. It's like, I want to see somebody like me who is beautiful, like, and is not apologizing because the man is 5'8" or 5. I don't care. Like, my voice and my shape and my size is beautiful and deserve to be seen. It's about wanting your voice to be out there, because you also know that other people need to hear your voice and need to see the story that you're telling, because so many women, girls, whoever just needs to see that. It makes you feel less alone.
Yeah.
And there's some really, it doesn't actually exist, but there's some idea of perfection that we all seem to be trying to reach. And I don't know who determined what the rules are of perfection. I don't actually know what they are. I just know that there's a constant monologue that I'm not it. You know?
Yes.
And so, and in this idea that, you know, well, what I'm writing, is it even worth it? Is it anything new? Is it anything that anyone hasn't already said? Or, you know, I know it happens with directing. Like, is this idea, haven't we seen this idea 17 times in 17 other things? And it actually is enough that it's coming from you, from your voice, with your sensibility and your take on whatever the story is, the character is, whatever. But it's really, that's hard to feel great about that.
Well, then I also think the work becomes like, what do I really think? I mean, I feel like for me that like spending a life as an artist is just that. Like, I feel like I've been socialized to think and believe so many things and conditioned to, and then I have my own things I think I'm not allowed to show the world. And so it's just like part of my voice is like, wait, what do I really think? Because I've been too scared to let anyone know what I really think for so long. You know what I mean? So
It's like giving yourself permission.
Yeah.
That's half of the battle.
yeah.
I had a deep fear when I first did For Colored Girls, because it's a dearly beloved play by Ndizake Shange, and it's over 40 years old, and there's like I feel like there's like 1 degree of separation. Somebody's been in it, directed it,
Seen it,
seen it, knows it.
Yeah.
I did brown, I did red, I did like, So it's like, oh my gosh. And I was talking to a friend and they said, don't think about that. Think about it as an offering. This is what your voice, this is your vision. And it totally, that one phrase just completely shifted everything in me, because it wasn't about the comparison, and like you said, it's about your voice. It can only you can tell your voice, and what does that mean, and your truth, and how wonderful is it when we step into that power of sharing our voice and what that looks like. No matter what people think, it's our voice, and nobody can take that away from you.
Well, speaking of the projects you all have coming up, and speaking of voices, like Heidi, the last show you did on Broadway was What the Constitution Means to Me, which you wrote and performed in and have caused many people to ugly cry while they watch it. But this season you're adapting Uncle Vanya, and so how are you fitting your voice with the voice of this dead man, with all the expectations that come with adapting a classic text?
That's a great question. I will say I have two answers. The first one is, the first reason I did it is because of Lila Neugebauer, who's directing it. She came to me and asked me if I would do translation. I've known Lila since she was just like a little kid. I met her at Actors Theater of Louisville back in 2008 when she was at the Princess Grace Fellowship. She was the assistant director for my first play in New York in 2009. And she really was just a baby then. And I remember thinking, like, this is a brilliant person. Like, I am so lucky I get to know her from the beginning. And then we were neighbors for many years. And we pitched a project to Williamstown that they said no to. We'd been trying to work together for a really long time. So I would basically, I think, say yes to anything she brought me. However, I also happened to have lived in Russia for 2 years, and I studied Russian for 6 years, and I translated The Seagull with my theater company when I was in my early 20s. He's always been one of my favorite writers. And I also I had like a day job in my 20s doing like simultaneous translation for, there was a theater company from Vladivostok who would come to Seattle and do like the Lower Depths and Cherry Orchard, Seagull, and I got to translate on my feet, which I loved because it was like a form of acting, and I felt like my job was to like be a channel for the actor, and they were wonderful actors, so it was this kind of like act of, I don't know, becoming like a vessel for another actor. I felt I learned so much about acting doing it, and so when Lila came to me about Uncle Vanya, which is also one of my favorite plays, I was like, oh, I want to create a translation that feels like that. First of all, I was like, we don't need another translation of Uncle Vanya. There are too many, and there's a lot of great ones. But then I was like, but I'll be in the room making it with these actors. I know this language. I have a long history with this play. I have a lot of feelings about the women in the play. And it just felt exciting to revisit this play that is so much about, I always think of that Mary Oliver quote, the like, how will you spend your one wild and precious life? And I feel very much, I'm like middle-aged, my parents are getting old and dealing with stuff, and I have young children, and so I feel very much like I'm standing in the river of time in a very intense way. I'm thinking of like, how have I spent my time? Am I spending it well? What do I want to do with the rest of the time I have left? And I feel like every character in this play is confronting that on such an intense level and almost, painful level, many of them, that it just felt like the play I was supposed to interpret right now. And the last thing I'll say is it feels a little more akin to like returning to acting, where I'm like, because if I get to play every part this time, I think I would be a great Astrov. I feel like Astrov is my part. Will Jackson Harper's gonna be amazing, but I feel like there's another production with all women or something.
Sold. Yep, sold.
Yeah, this is a long-winded answer, but I would say Lila and life is given to us only once. What do we do with it? Which I feel like is the heart of this play, called to me.
And Amber, in Lempicka, you're playing the love interest. You are the romantic lead.
Yes, I am.
I think Eden Espinosa is as tall as you.
Yes, that's my girl.
But like Rafaela is the muse for Tamara Lempicka, and usually muses are supporting. But how have you been able to make this character have more agency so you're not falling into those usual tropes?
I think I can't take full credit. I think Matt, our composer, Carson, our book writer, have been very intentional about creating a whole human, a whole woman. I also think an actor's first job is to observe. I've been working on this show, I think 6 years. And your question reminded me, there was a moment, I can't remember what number of reading we were doing. It was one of those, read it and then everyone tell me first impressions. And everyone's crying and oh my God, it's so beautiful. And I felt really compelled because when they got to me, I was like, I'm so sorry, but I just still have a question about why Rafaela is here and why she stays. And, we tabled it for later and I talked to Carson. I was like, I just don't see it. Like, I'm just not seeing what compels her to stay. And Carson was like, she says this. I was like, Carson, I don't see that. And I think Carson went home one night, got a glass of wine, read the script, and she said, everything that I thought was here got edited 4 drafts ago. And but that's my job as an artist, is to observe, is to live inside of this. Like, I know Carson knows this thing up, down, left, and right, but it's also my job to live inside of this woman. And I have to ask the questions. Sure, I could just sit there and be like, okay, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna sing these lyrics, but I don't think that's why I was hired. I think I'm in rooms like this because I have a point of view, because I listen and pay attention, and I think critically, and I'm always trying to tell the best story, be the best craftsman, like I was originally when I got into this business. And after I said that to Carson and she heard me, then Matt wrote a song called Stay. And it's like that character sings this song because I asked these questions, because I needed to make sure that when I stand on this stage, we're telling a whole story and we're seeing a whole woman. So I think it's collaboration. I think it's just, if I'm gonna be here, I need to take up space and it needs to make sense. So I try to do that in every room that I'm in. It's like observe, listen, and when I know that I've done the work and this isn't making sense, like, let's talk about this. I hope that they hear me when I never want to be a nuisance in a room, but I think this is a collaborative sport. To me, being an artist, I feel like I'm in the NBA. You know what I mean? And it's my job. This is my team, and I want us all to win. We all have the same goal, for this show to be as successful as possible, so we can all make $10 million. So I feel like it should be a collaborative. You know what I'm saying? Don't we all want to win millions? So if I'm asking for what I need because I want to help tell the best stories possible, I think that I'm doing my job, and I always hope it's well received, and then that we can fly to the finish line together.
I feel like that's the dream actor to work with.
Yeah.
It's true though, because they're looking out for
In service to the story.
service to the story,
Yeah.
and to say like this doesn't make sense.
Yes.
I can't go forward
That's
right
the
now.
thing.
Yeah.
And it's a problem we all have to solve together.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I can act it. I can act it like it makes sense, or we can make sure it's on the page so that
Yeah.
it really makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's such that is such a real thing that for a writer, I find it as a director as well. For years, you're working on a project in development. You're constantly in rewrites. You're constantly re-examining, and you can put old drafts onto a new one. You're like, okay, that's there. It's like, no, that's just in your. That's in the past in your brain, but it's not actually on the page. Like we've done too deep a cut.
Exactly.
So it is really important. Those conversations in development are so important.
Team sport, it really is.
And speaking of collaboration and development, Camille, can you tell us about collaborating with Alicia Keys? Because her songs are set in so many people's minds, but you have to add your own language to it. And so how do you put your own voice into something that's already so creative?
No pressure. Well, I'm very honored to be on the team, and I actually joined almost 2 years ago, February 2022, and we had 2 workshops. And one of the ways that I love entering, I feel like the story, the world tells me how to move inside of it. So Hell's Kitchen takes place in the 90s and in New York City, and I'm originally from New York City. So I'm already connecting. I already have a personal connection to it. Some of the social dances that happened during the 90s, I did like all of those dances. So it's also about incorporating that. But I think what's beautiful about the storytelling by Christopher Diaz and Alicia Keys is that the movement and the story provide more than just social dance for the world, but also a creative movement language that's specific to Hell's Kitchen, which is really wonderful. So Alicia's created 4 new songs for the show. So I'm excited to show people my take on Empire. You know, I literally hear Empire on 34th Street every time I'm on the way to Penn Station every night. And so how do you as a choreographer give people what they want, you know, that rhythm and that life, that New York City vibe, but also share something that's new and different, and also adding to it. So I'm excited to share that. And also she has this really beautiful song, it's new, called Kaleidoscope.
I knew you were gonna say that.
You know,
I just
that's
saw
my
the
song.
show and Camille it's brilliant.
Thank you.
Like people are clapping, I'm like, Camille! I kept yelling your name when people are clapping because I was like, y'all are clapping for the show, but y'all are clapping for Camille A. Brown's excellence.
Thank you.
They were dancing on that piano.
Thank you.
girl.
Yes. People were like, you got them dancing on the piano.
As in Spanish.
Like, listen, you know, so
brilliant,
thank you, Amber. But so that's so combining all of her well-known songs and her new songs, and creating a language that also involves social dance, but also involves my creative language. So in the beginning, I said I'm from the concert dance world, so it gives me an opportunity to bring that kind of movement, that kind of contemporary modern dance feel that I don't necessarily always get to put, because everything has a specific place. But I feel like this world provides so many opportunities for me to access so many journeys that I've had in my own life. As a New Yorker, as a woman, as a teenager growing up in New York City, taking the subway at 13. So I put all of that in there. At least try.
No, I'm excited to see 2,000 people dancing to Empire.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Jessica, we once had a conversation where someone told you were up for a project and someone said that it was too big for you.
Oh, jeez.
They love to infantilize us. Yes, that is true. That is true. And I think about that a lot because it actually went to someone who arguably had less experience than I did. But
Is it a man?
yes. But that doesn't mean I worry. You know.
We know what you're saying.
It doesn't. Yes, it was a man, but and the person who decided that it was too big for me was of another generation. So there's also that.
Understood.
And it would have been probably, you know what? I could have done it.
We know you could have done it. Yes.
It was a little bit silly. It was a little bit silly. Yeah. But it's not lost on me that the scale of it was actually not so big. It was not that threatening, you know? And yet this project that I'm working on this season is deceptively big. Like it actually looks spare, but there's circus and puppetry and a stampede, you know, and a train, you know, like it actually is really big and the offer came sort of effortlessly because the people making the decisions were not scared of the new. And, you know, it's not that it wasn't, I mean, I had to go on some meetings and, you know, there was some pitching involved and there were some ideas that had to be shared, but the culture that that our producers have created, it started from day one that they were just really interested in new voices and they were not scared to bring them on. So I think, and so because they weren't scared, I wasn't scared. You know, I think that the other job, I could have done it, but having someone stressed out over my shoulder thinking that I can't is not going to make things great. So it's all meant to be, but it is a funny thing addressing the limitations that other people determined for you. It is it's a funny part of the experience. And I think everybody, all genders, I think everybody experiences it, but I think we experience it a lot. Yeah, I think women experience it a lot.
But how do you overcome that?
Well, just with really, really hard work. I don't really know. I think there's no handbook for any one moment. I think just with really hard work and a little bit of faith and a little bit of breath and a little bit of humor, and a little bit of luck. Sort of an unsatisfying answer.
But it's the right one.
And also right people saying yes.
Yeah, exactly. Have you experienced that?
It is funny. I do. It does make me think when you're talking about your producers now, and this talk about like community and relying on one another. I mean, I do feel like that's often the way forward. And I think one of the reasons I so wanted to work with Lila is just like then find the people who you can depend on and who can depend on you, and find your community and find. And I feel like I've been the lucky recipient of so much mentoring from women, and so much sometimes younger women. I feel like I've been mentored by younger women.
Yes.
Into like even like Lila. I watched Lila operate, and I'm like, I could never. I'm just like learning so much from watching her direct. Like she's so straightforward and so unafraid, and sometimes I'm like, but will they? And she's like, no, we have to get what we need. And I'm like, all right. So for me, like I think in both my career in theater and in TV film, it's really finding particularly other women and men who are excited to work with you and then cling to them. Yeah.
It's funny, and I don't mean, I actually have had some really important mentors that were men. So it's really not so much about only women make room for other women. It does help, and there is truth to it, but I've had really, really important mentors who I love deeply who are men. I think that you can be hired and fired for the same voice and for the same talent. And I think if you are surrounded by like-minded storytellers and artists, that's when the best stuff happens. And so, the person who said it's too big for her, we were never going to make a great story together,
Like what Heidi was saying about mentorship, it reminds me of why you started Black Women on Broadway, Amber, to provide that mentoring space for other Black women. So can you speak on why that is? Like, what has been the positive effects of that?
I've always just been trying to bridge the gap intergenerationally. I even read somewhere that it said if you are a woman over 40 and you don't have a mentor under 40, you aren't doing it right. But I believe that is important. It's like we always think your mentor, you got to have a mentor it's like, no, we need to all be talking to each other because there are things that those are younger than us have figured out that we haven't figured out. And I think with Black women, especially, I think something that kind of took me by surprise in this business is there are certain Black women in this industry who I have put on pedestals and I think are it and have everything. And I didn't realize so many of them are in pain or aren't being supported the way they needed to be supported. Or I read somewhere Audra talked about going shopping for her first Tony dress and being followed in the store because they thought she was stealing. And here I think that's Queen Mother. And you talk to LaShans and you talk to Lilius and you talk to Adrienne Lennox and you're like, oh, these women need us now more than ever. And so I've always been interested in just making space for us all to get into the room and talk, or get into the room and get the resources that we need, because so many of us have stories to tell. We just need someone to help connect the dots. And that was why we, Black Women on Broadway, produced our first Black Women on Broadway award ceremony and brunch. It was just an excuse for us to get in the room and just celebrate each other. Not I'm passing you as you're going to Telsey, not I'm seeing you as you're running for the A train. We're never not on our way to something. It's what if we all are just here to just see each other and be cute? Because we deserve that too. Let's just celebrate each other, but also just have a cocktail and just talk. And that has just been my goal, is just putting Black women in spaces where they can thrive, see each other, love each other, celebrate each other, because we need it. We don't really realize 2020 really kind of flashed a light when we were all separated and we were all trying to find ways to connect. And I was like, but we should do this all the time, not just because it's a pandemic. Like, we should be connecting and networking and working together. And, well, I have a screenplay, but I don't know how to, oh, well, you do costumes and you do, look, I have everything I need right in this room. Like, we are all just needing to get in a place where we can, like, talk to each other, communicate. I think that's very vital. I know I would not have survived my 11 years in New York without community, without people putting $20 in my hand, without somebody giving me an unlimited Metro card or making me dinner or just hiring me for a job that I completely didn't belong doing it, but they knew I needed to not be evicted, you know? So I'm always just trying to look for ways that we can just all be in community with each other, because I think that's what keeps us going.
I have the concert dance version.
Come on, Camille.
For the same reason. I started it in 2014, and I would run, we would run into other Black women and have conversations and talk about the challenges and the highs and the lows. And I just thought, why don't we all just come together and have a conversation?
Yeah.
Black female choreographers seeing each other from all generations. So the concert dance version
That's it. A lot of us are trying to be the thing that we needed. Like, when I first moved to New York, I went on Facebook like, where's the support group for people struggling? And I was like, am I the only one struggling? And then, like, the more people I met, I was like, oh, we're all struggling. No one's talking about it out loud because we don't want everybody to know we're struggling. So I'm like, I don't mind y'all knowing I'm struggling, because if I say I'm struggling out loud, maybe somebody else can be like, oh God, thank you, I'm also struggling. I think that's a lot of the work that I do, is just so people feel less alone. Like, there's somebody out there who is going through the same thing you're going through, and there's no recipe to, like, if we do these 3 things, we will get out of this struggle. But at least sometimes just knowing you're not by yourself,
Right.
especially as women, it can. It's the difference between night and day. Like, it really just helps sometimes just to know, okay, I'm at the top of my game. I'm doing as much as I can. I am working as hard as I can, and the math still is not mathing sometimes. And just knowing that helps you, like, take a deeper breath and be like, okay, I'm gonna be okay. So that's all I'm really trying to do, is help people know that, girl, we all struggling.
And it sounds like, yet again, you're like, well, who's going to take it? I guess. But thank goodness.
Yes.
Thank goodness for you, Amber,
Thank you.
because it's, you're saying it out loud
Thank you.
and then
Yeah.
making it,
Then other people can say it
and
out
the
loud.
ripple effect is incredible.
That's what it is. Yeah.
It's funny, my closest girlfriends in New York are really the people I was always competing for roles with.
Yes.
Because you really get to know each other. You're in the waiting room all the
Yeah.
time. And I remember, I think my mom asking me, are you all very competitive? Is it, I don't know, she was thinking of like stage door or something. I'm like, and I was like, no, those are my best friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, always really we're always very happy for one another. Like, Miriam got the role. She's amazing. Go, it's a really interesting thing. That's where I found the most community, actually, in those audition videos.
Yeah.
When I first moved here.
Those are your friends.
Yeah.
It leads me to, this might not be anything anyone wants to talk about, but we can just edit it right out. But it leads me to, nobody tells you when you're starting out, some of the skill set is what you do with your downtime. And some of, so I'm just thinking like all those, because I had the same experience when I was acting. Like, some of my dearest friends, we'd be in audition rooms, and as happy as you are, sometimes you take it personally when you don't get the job, but often it's like, well, I was never, that role was never mine, and I'm glad that person, and yet there I am, unemployed. And what does that mean as an artist? And do you think that periods of downtime inspired or enabled you to do the activism, to pivot into, was it actually a little bit of space and quiet that allowed you to say, I think I want to pursue theater or writing, or like, what? I'm curious about that. What happened to you with your downtime and with your between jobs, and you don't always know that it's between jobs because you don't know when the next one is.
I feel like, interestingly enough, my biggest pivot came while I was employed, but I was employed in a show that did not feed or challenge me. It fed me financially and bankrupted me spiritually. So there was downtime. I used to go to the gym before and after the show. I was the smallest, the skin, because I didn't have anything else to do but spend my money. Like the energy needed to go somewhere. So I was just at the gym. And then one day I called my good friend Jocelyn B.O. and I said, I've had enough. I wanted to have more agency over my life. It felt like a downtime. I was employed, but I was doing nothing. And I felt so unmotivated in my life. And doing that show and being that unmotivated, I wrote my first one-woman show, and I toured that, and now that one-woman show is on Audible, which made me write my first short film, and now I'm about to shoot my second short film. Like that downtime where I was employed changed my whole life. So it's not always unemployment. It's sometimes you're employed and you feel like you're unemployed.
Right.
But it's like now when I teach, if I go anywhere and do a master class, I don't do monologues. I'm like, if y'all are in school, y'all know monologues. I'm teaching you about how to survive, how to collect unemployment, file your taxes. It doesn't need to be a plan B, it's a plan A+. Because my mom used to say, Meryl Streep doesn't work 365 days a year. You will have downtime. And you do have to figure out what you do, because a lot of us, our purpose is tied to our employment. So when we're unemployed, we don't feel like we have a purpose. So it's like, I'm still trying to figure this out, what to do in the in-between time. Sometimes I'm like, I'm just working on being a good person. I'm just working on being a good daughter. I'm just working on something else that I love, or even finding what that is, because our art occupies so much of our life that we don't have hobbies that we do just for fun. Even most of my hobbies are related to my art. So I'm like, I want to go snowboarding. I want to do pottery. Like it's finding stuff that, sure, you need to find things that will help, finance your life, but also that bring you joy. Because I feel like we're the best artists when we live full, well-rounded lives. So I'm constantly trying to navigate that balance of like, I'm not working, but I am still someone, and I still matter, and I still have something to give to this world.
Yeah.
Even if it is just me snowboarding or whatever that looks like. It's a constant struggle for me. I don't know if y'all have guidance or have figured that out for yourselves.
You're on your own, sorry.
No, ma'am. That's on you. But
You know
what I'm saying?
No, I know.
They don't teach that part in
They
school.
don't teach it.
They just teach you how to audition.
I only now realize it. I wish I had known this when I was younger and had these periods of downtime and unemployment because now I have no time because I have 2 kids and I'm like, and I have jobs and and so just being what if my only purpose in my downtime could be to find pleasure, just enjoy life.
My God.
Yeah. No, rest.
What would that look like? And what
Yes.
was and just that, would snowboarding?
Yeah.
Maybe that's my only job to do, and I don't have to do something else. That seems
parenthood thing is its own.
Yes.
Artist, parent.
Yes.
That's true. There's no downtime.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before kids,
Before,
it
But I feel
was
like you're doing it right.
real.
You're
At least aware.
Yeah.
Having that
And
conversation.
I think now, I also, it's funny because my husband just had his 50th birthday, and all these people from many decades of our life came out to celebrate. I saw people I knew when I was a teenager in our 20s, and it was really miraculous. And I was also like, I wish I hadn't missed your wedding. I wish I just let my understudy go on.
Ooh.
yeah.
There's a little bit of if I had to go back, and I do think the ethos around things like this has changed.
Yes.
And I'm all for it. I feel like, why did I have to miss her? I had a great understudy, Susanna Flood. She was amazing.
Oh yeah. I missed a couple of weddings.
I know. And so really trying to hear this next part of my life, really make those decisions to be with the people I love and to connect and not always prioritize the show.
Yeah, Chris and I have, he had to deal with it more than I did because when I had the kids, I did start to transition to directing, which was a little different, but he was still in 8 shows a week and continues to be. And part of his negotiations and contracts over the years have been, I'm less interested, money is still great, but I'm less interested in the top dollar and more interested in the time off because of the kids. So he would often negotiate, weeks at a time that he'd be out of the show so he could just see his children grow and have a weekend or a spring break or and that was I'm very glad as we're now entering the chapter where they're soon going to be heading off to college. Still a couple of years, but it's close. I'm really glad that we, prioritize that, because you don't want to miss that. It happens really quickly.
I just want to shout out Rachel Chackin, who in our rehearsal process, we're trying a new thing where we're only rehearsing Monday through Friday.
Oh, yes.
When I saw that, I almost cried. Can you imagine crying just because you have a weekend?
Right.
Like, that's how often we don't have a weekend.
Right.
I've never had this. And just to know that I will get a Saturday and Sunday to see someone I love and also do my laundry.
Exactly.
I'm excited. So I'm definitely wanting to lean into what you ladies are saying, which is spending time with people I love.
I also think it makes for better art, because I
Yes.
think when you're processing a role or making a story together, I honestly think it's less about how many hours you put in per week and kind of the span of time you have to allow things to marinate. And there's a point at which me going home and resting and having a dream about this show is way more
That's it.
fertile than
Yes.
coming in
My God.
rehearsing.
Yeah. That's what the shutdown did for me.
Yeah.
Because everything was piling up in terms of gigs, and I felt like I wasn't getting. We look at a calendar and it goes from gig to gig to gig, but we all know that there's preparation time, there's pre-production there, and that wasn't being accounted for.
Yeah.
So I was really starting to freak out, and For Color Girls was going in 2020. And I wasn't ready. And the shutdown happened, and it gave me an opportunity to figure out what my vision was. So when we opened back up, we're back, not back, we're open back. I was ready to share my version of what it was, and I would not have had that had we not had that shutdown.
Yeah.
Rest.
Had everyone just said stop, had the world said stop, not
Yeah.
said stop. That really helped my creative process. And I know a lot of horrible things, and people had to go through a lot of challenges during that time. But it gave me an opportunity to rest and process and really to create, because everything was just going.
Yeah.
And it was just about the work of it and not the process. And that helped me find what my process was.
Because sometimes the process requires not solving it, being bad, coming up with 3 or 4 really terrible ideas. You need room to
Exactly.
fail and be
Exactly.
boring.
Right.
You need room to be boring.
Yeah.
And I know I had a very similar experience with, and it was actually Kimberly and Water for Elephants. They happened and have been happening side by side for 6 years now. And it was the same thing. There are elements of both of those shows that I think would have been super, super different in not a great way if we hadn't had the space. And I completely agree. It was such a traumatic, horrible thing for all of us in many different ways. But having time was, I didn't realize how much I missed it and needed it.
Well, our radio guys are telling me we have to wrap up, but just going around the table briefly, can you give me a wish for the industry?
I wish all audiences are back and that we have the kind of excitement and commitment and not even back. I shouldn't say back. I wish that our audiences continue to come and that we have really fertile, full minds in our theaters.
I wish for young Black girls to look at the theater industry and instantly see themselves and believe that all things are possible.
Yes, and I wish we can make space for everybody to feel seen, heard, and affirmed, that they feel safe in these rehearsal rooms, that they are given an opportunity to tell these stories from the top down. I just want us to make space, build our own tables. However, we have to do it. I just want space. Yeah.
You guys, I went right to commerce. It's like,
But that's important.
It's out to make money.
But that's important. Yes, and. Yes, and.
Billions of dollars.
Yes.
Heidi.
Oh my.
That's a hard one, isn't it?
It's hard.
I wish for more support for this industry.
Ooh.
But as soon as you begin wishing that, like I wish for like that we didn't live in the kind of capitalist culture that offers no support to artists. That's what I wish. For the end of capitalism.
And more money for everyone.
Period.
But I want a really nice house.
And a cabana boy. Yeah.
Thank you all.
So